everyone, this is Fairy and welcome to the first actual video on this channel. I'm really sorry if my makeup looks crazy. I did it quite a while ago. It is about 12:30 midnight right now. It's actually Yule today when I'm filming, so I have my little Yule log back there. But my partner and I went out to see some Christmas lights and I tried to touch up my makeup, but this is just how it's gonna be. Anyway, I know this is not like the most exciting video ever, but I thought that since this is a new channel and I haven't really spoken much about my practice here on YouTube on my other channel, since it's a cosplay channel, Blood Moon Fairy, I wanted to kind of set a bit of a baseline as to like where I am in my practice, what kind of magic I do, and that kind of thing. I might do like a tag or a Q&A later, but for now I'm just kind of going to go over the basics of what I personally believe and why I don't practice Wicca anymore. Just a quick disclaimer before I get really into this video. I don't mean for the message of this video to come across as me like shaming anybody that still is a practicing Wiccan, and I'm not trying to say that it's a bad religion or anything like that. I totally respect anybody who practices the Wicca faith. I think that it's a really wonderful path for a lot of people. It just ended up not being right for me, and I wanted to share that with you. So I have been a practicing witch since 2015, so at the time of filming it's been about just over 5 years since I started. Now when I started, I was lucky enough to have a friend of mine who was a practicing witch, and they were able to give me some resources to get started, including like books, a little starter kit of magic stuff and things like that, and a safe place to ask questions, which I think is really important when you're getting into witchcraft. I know that as a beginner there's a lot of information that you feel like you need to learn, and it can be really intimidating to ask more experienced witches and pagans because it feels like it's a dumb question and things like that. So it's really helpful to have somebody that you know personally that can help answer those dumb questions. Anyway, so I started as just a witch. I wasn't really interested in religion at all. And then I think about 2 years later, it was a little bit after I had started college, I kind of started getting interested in Wicca. There were a few different YouTubers that I watched that were Wiccan, and it kind of gave me a jumping off point because my friend Wes, who was like my mentor, was not religious either. They didn't really have a great experience with Wicca and paganism, so they're just a witch, and I didn't really feel inclined to go into anything. My candles are crackling. So I started diving into it. I actually did do the Wicca Year in a Day study thing. I'm not going to dig the book out, but it's this big fatty book. It's just called Wicca Year in a Day. And the point of the book is you're supposed to go in and do this reading and exercise every day for 366 days. And then at the end of the book, then you are a Wiccan. So I started going into that, and I was really enjoying having something to look forward to every day, having more information to look at. The book is actually really helpful if you are looking at getting into Wicca. I would very, very, very strongly suggest doing your year in a day practice. Some Wiccans even argue that you can't be Wiccan unless you do that year in a day practice. It covers things like their views on gods and goddesses, the Sabbats and all of the holidays and things like that. It goes into divination, it goes into magic, like it goes into a whole bunch of different topics. So I was doing that, and towards the beginning is when they focus on the god and goddess stuff, and I just like have never really vibed with that. I have a very difficult time connecting with the god and goddess energy, and this was so literal and very focused on those energies that I had a really hard time connecting with it, but I thought that it was just something that I would, you know, have to get used to. There's a lot of things in witchcraft that feel really fucking weird at first, and then once you get used to it, it feels normal. I thought I would just give it a chance to get normal. I finished my year in a day, and I continued on through college for a couple years as a practicing Wiccan. Very recently, just a couple months ago, I was at my local witch store, and the owner, I'm actually friends with her, she had let me know that she got a whole bunch of new books in, which I love. So I was browsing through the books and one caught my attention in particular. It is called The Crooked Path by Kelden, spelled K-E-L-D-E-N. And this book is actually about traditional witchcraft. I'm not quite sure why it stood out to me because from just like looking at it, it looked like a basic intro to witchcraft book, which like I'm not a beginner witch anymore at this point, so I don't know why it jumped out to me so much, but I flipped through it and I decided to give it a go. Traditional witchcraft is based a lot more in folk magic and tradition. This is the type of magic that some people associate with like the devil and like evil stuff and like spooky things. And because a lot of it has to do with working with spirits and the other world. The big thing with traditional witchcraft is interacting with the other world and interacting with spirits. Some people also call this crossing over the hedge, which as far as I know is where the term hedge witch has come from, but it does have some negative connotations, I feel. But it was definitely a path that really stood out to me. In the very beginning of the book, there's a bit of a foreword kind of talking about the author's childhood living near the woods and how he would go out into the woods as a kid and like make these weird potions and like talk to the fae and like all the local forest spirit stuff, and that just resonated with me so much. And as I've gone through the book, it's just really changed my perception of magic and how I practice. As I started to read more and more about this path and the misconceptions that are surrounding it and the stigma surrounding it, it kind of made me realize some of the issues that I was having, feeling trapped in my Wicca bubble. One of the biggest problems that I have with Wicca is the amount of influencers that will push the narrative that if you do negative magic, that you are a bad person. I think personally that there is a time and place for negative magic. There is a time and place for hexes. There is a time and place for spells that benefit you and nobody else. There's time and place for love spells. There's time and place for any kind of spell that you can think of. And if you personally don't want to cast some of those kind of spells, that is absolutely fine. But I don't think it's okay to shame other people who are participating in these traditions and rituals and spells. And that's kind of the, I guess not myth, but like the agenda that's being pushed by some Wiccan content creators. I'm not talking about anybody in particular, or any specific YouTuber or person or anything like that, but with the amount of content that I've watched on Wicca on YouTube, I can definitely say that there is an underlying tone. There's also, in that same vein, the narrative that people don't do these things anymore, that like traditional witchcraft is outdated and nobody participates in it. Nobody does hexes and spells or curses anymore. That doesn't happen. When in reality, that kind of thing happens all the time, and there's a whole bunch of witches that do participate in that type of magic. Now, I personally, I have never cast a hex or a curse on anybody. That's not really something that I need to do right now. But if I needed to, I feel like with my old path, I would have felt really guilty and not able to do it. But with my current path, I think I would feel really empowered. In my opinion, also, there are a lot of Wiccan content creators that act like Wicca is the only path. And they'll say, oh, you can do paganism, or you can just be a witch, you don't have to be Wiccan, but there's just not really a lot of resources around for people that aren't Wiccan or that aren't witches who follow Wiccan ideals like the Wiccan Rede, the Law of Three, etc. And again, in that same vein, I think that there's a lot of people that push a certain witchy aesthetic where you have to look a certain way to be a witch, you have to have these certain types of tools, you have to speak a certain way, your grimoire has to look this way. And of course, you know, these people will always say, oh, your grimoire can look different than this, it's okay. But it still is a stereotype that's being perpetuated. And I know a lot of witches and pagans, and I do not know a single person that has like all of this aesthetic junk all around their house and like does a spell every single day and like is all love and light and never gets mad at anybody ever. So this video has been a long-winded way of saying that I am a hedge witch. I don't really identify as a traditional witch. There are some of the practices that I'm more comfortable using my Wiccan background, like the casting a circle, which traditional witches call the compass round, and things like that, where I'll kind of draw upon some of my Wiccan and witchcraft background, but I do participate in reaching the other world, communing with spirits. I work with the Witch Father and the Witch Mother, so I'm kind of in a middle ground, so I just call myself a hedge witch. And the goal of this channel is to bring you honest and real witchcraft. This is a no bullshit channel. I am not here to tell you that you should never be upset when you're casting a spell, that you should never put your emotions into a spell. I'm never going to tell you that you can't be mad at people and that if you're upset that you're going to get bit in the ass by the universe. Again, I hope that this video doesn't come off like I'm trying to attack anybody, because again, if you believe these things, that's awesome, and I'm so glad that you have a path that works out for you. I just have gotten very tired of watching people that I don't feel represent a large portion of the witch and pagan community, and I want to help show that that part of the community exists. So I'm very excited to start on this journey with you guys. Right after this, I'm going to film a quick video going through my grimoires and my Book of Shadows. And I have a few other ideas for videos, but if there's anything that you guys would like to see in particular, please let me know in the comments. I would love to hear, because I really want to make videos for this channel. So thank you guys so much for watching to me be on my soapbox about Wicca, and I will see you next time. Bye.